October 2002. Nothing to report about my personal life. Still working at Frame Art Galleries. Still living by the police station. Still reading books. So let's jump in. The first book that I read in October of 2002 is Trilogy of the Second Age, Book 3, Children of the Dragon by Richard E. Dansky, finishing off the trilogy that I started in September of 2002. This is from White Wolf Publishing. It's uh, it takes place in the world before it became the world of darkness, which is where most of the White Wolf role playing games and card games and everything else take place with vampires and werewolves and all of that stuff. This is the second age before the world of darkness. It's a fantasy world, and so we, in the first two books, introduced to our characters, introduced to the world, and let's look back. Um, okay, well, same two characters I have in my notes for last video. Um, so now, Yushuv, however you say his name, one of our heroes is on his own, fighting against the bad guy. His only ally, Eliza Wren, has been pulled into the underworld, so he's not going to be any help. Our heroes be able to stop the? I think it's like the Prince of Darkness or something. Um, just fantasy action in this fantasy world with the types, the races, the classes of characters that you would play in a role playing game. I don't think they're not exactly like Dungeons and Dragons, but basically a fantasy world from World of Darkness, so different than D&D, but a novel based on that. Our good guys fighting the bad guys. That's not the best explanation whatsoever, but I don't remember much from this book. But I followed that up with another book that has dragon in the title, The Dragon della Sangra by Alan F. Troop. This is the first book in what I believe is a 4-book series. The main character is Peter della Sangra. He's telling his story, and he is a were-dragon. Very, very interesting concept. So he's one of the last of his kind. He lives on an island by himself. Has a human form, can change into a dragon. He's near Miami, and as I said, he's telling his story. We're introduced to the character. We're introduced to it's the real world. There just happen to be were-dragons and other things. And as he's telling the story, part of the story is he's looking for a female that he can, I hate to say mate with, become partners with. Looking for a female were-dragon to perhaps perpetuate the species. Anyway, it's a very interesting book. If you're, I'm a big fan of werewolves and other were creatures, so a were-dragon I thought was pretty interesting. And it's not a bad book. As I said, the first of 4. The Dragon della Sangra by Alan F. Troop. Then we have, Crimson Skies by Eric Nyland, Michael B. Lee, and Nancy Berman and Eric S. Troutman. Nancy and Eric wrote a story together. Takes place in the Crimson Skies world, which is a Microsoft game where the United States has been fractured, I think because of the Civil War, and so it's been broken up into essentially different countries. So travel by ground, by car, by rail, or by whatever, is essentially done with because of all these different territories. They don't want people just driving through. So now everything is air based, airplanes, zeppelins. So you have air pirates and all this crazy stuff. And this book has 3 stories set in this world. The first one is The Case of the Phantom Prototype. The main character's name is Paladin Blake, and it's just sort of a pulpy adventure story. These are all kind of pulpy adventure stories. We have The second story is Genghis Khan and the Manchurian Gambit. Genghis Khan is the leader of the Red Skull Legion. They're pirates, but for some reason, Genghis Khan is doing good deeds. What could be up with that? And then the final story is Bayou Blues. Nathan Zachary is the main character in this, and he's been in some of the other Crimson Skies stuff that I've read, I've talked about on earlier videos. Just good pulpy adventure. I like this stuff. I loved the video game, and it's the main reason I got an Xbox instead of a PlayStation, was because the Xbox would play Crimson Skies. So a lot of fun. Crimson Skies by all of those authors. I'm not going to read all their names again. Good pulp adventure. Next up, we have Cut. Horror Writers on Horror Film, edited by Christopher Golden. This is a nonfiction book. So it's a bunch of horror writers writing about horror films. I'm going to be reading a lot of stuff here, so bear with me. So on the back cover, just to give you an idea of the types of things they're talking about. The 13 most disturbing films of all time. The erotic shockers of David Lynch, director of Blue Velvet, Eraserhead, and Twin Peaks. The sexual politics of Fatal Attraction, A Woman's Point of View. The exploding families of David Cronenberg, director of Dead Ringers, The Fly, Scanners, and The Brood. The monstrous creations of Wes Craven, director of A Nightmare on Elm Street and The Hills Have Eyes. Todd Browning's Freaks, the ultimate cinematic sideshow. The Shock Machine of Dario Argento, director of Suspiria and The Bird with the Crystal Plumage. The House of Hammer, the British film company that spawned the legends of Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing. Cannibal movies, the Universal Taboo. And highbrow horror, low-budget thrills, funny fright flicks, and much more. And now, all of the people that are in here. So this is essentially a bunch of horror writers just writing stuff about horror films. And you have, excuse me, Christopher Golden, Clive Barker and Peter Atkins, Stephen R. Bissett, Gary Bradner, Ramsey Campbell, Nancy A. Collins, John Ferris, Craig Shaw Gardner, Ray Garton, Ed Gorman, Charles L. Grant, Melissa Mia Hall, Nancy Holder, Joe R. Lansdale, T. Liam McDonald, Thomas F. Monteleone, or Monteleone, never sure how you say his name, Philip Nutman, Catherine Tasic, Catherine Ramsland, Anne Rice, Paul M. Salmon, John Skip and Craig Spector, Stanley Wiater, W-I-A-T-E-R, Douglas E. Winter, and Chelsea Quinn Yarbrough. Just some heavy hitters. Fantastic book. I've been meaning to reread this, and maybe I'll reread it this year. Maybe I'll save it for October, make it like the 12th year anniversary of when I first or last read it. Really, really interesting stuff. If you're a fan of these horror writers, if you're a fan of horror films, highly recommend Cut, Horror Writers on Horror Film, edited by Christopher Golden. Great, great book. Then we have Angel, Stranger to the Sun by Jeff Marriott, based on the TV show Angel, the spin-off of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And, excuse me, people are falling into comas. Angel and Wesley are investigating that. Meanwhile, Cordelia has become privy to a plot by vampires to blot out the sun. And is it all going to come together into a single case? You never know with a book like this. Sometimes they're two separate cases. A lot of times they meld. Turns out it's all part of the same thing. You'd have to read it to find out. But that's Angel, Stranger to the Sun by Jeff Marriott. Then we have Smallville, Strange Visitors by Roger Stern, based on the Smallville TV show. For those who don't know, the big conceit of the show, I suppose, that's what I would call it anyway, is when Kal-El rocketed to Earth, the rocket itself was sort of camouflaged by all of these meteors or meteorites, whichever one it is that strikes the Earth. So in Smallville, Kansas, the rocket crashed, but there was also all of this debris from Krypton, meaning huge area seeded with kryptonite, and the kryptonite affected people. And so your sort of villain of the week was usually somebody that got some sort of strange power because of their exposure to kryptonite. Um, it was an interesting show, I thought. I enjoyed the first three seasons. I didn't even finish the fourth, or did I? I think I finished the fourth season and thought it was terrible. And then the fifth season would have like a great episode and then a horrible episode and then a great episode, horrible episode. I stopped watching it except for a few special episodes. There was one with the Wonder Twins on it, so I watched that. There was one with the Justice Society of America, so I watched that. And I did watch the last episode, the finale. But anyway, in this story, there is a faith healer and lecturer named Donald Jacoby who comes to Smallville. He happens to have possession of some kryptonite, and a lot of people in Smallville are going to fallen under his spell. Clark Kent, who has some powers, but is not Superboy or Superman yet. Clark Kent has to figure it out, save the day. So if you're a fan of Smallville, interesting story. And Roger Stern has written a lot of Superman stuff. He knows what he's doing as a writer. That's Smallville Strange Visitors by Roger Stern. Then we have A Galaxy Not So Far Away, edited by Glenn Kenny. And this is a collection of essays, 18 essays, about Star Wars. And it's written by writers and pop culture people from Kevin Smith to Jonathan Lethem. Those are the two names I chose to put down. And as I said, it's a bunch of essays that range from just ruminations on the movies themselves to the movies and their place and impact in pop culture, to more personal essays on simply how they affected the particular person that wrote the essay. I think that covers most of the ground. So if you're a Star Wars fan, it's just an interesting look at the phenomena of Star Wars. A Galaxy Not So Far Away, edited by Glenn Kenny. After that, we have CSI Double Dealer by Max Allan Collins. Book, an original story based on the TV show CSI, which is about the crime scene investigators in Las Vegas. There are two investigations going on in this story. Some of the CSI people are investigating a newly discovered 15-year-old murder, and some of the other people are looking for an execution-style killer, someone who's killing people with a double tap. And so it's an episode of CSI, basically. Max Allan Collins, great writer, which is the main reason I read this. I watched CSI not on a regular basis, but I watched a lot of it for a while and watched some CSI Miami. So Max Allan Collins for me was the major draw. But if you like those shows, then it's you might enjoy the book. Next, I forgot to look and see if I have this. I can't remember if I don't think I do, but there's a tiny chance I do. Next up is California Gothic by Dennis Etchison. I feel like I've either I've spotted it at a Half Price Books and didn't pick it up, or I've picked it up, but I forgot to look. Anyway, California Gothic by Dennis Etchison. The main character is a guy named Dan, who is a former cult member. And one day, his dead high school sweetheart, Jude, returns, and Dan has to fight to save the souls of his family from his undead high school girlfriend, or dead high school girlfriend. I think this was in the Abyss line. I'm not 100% sure. But California Gothic. Dennis Etchison. I don't know what else to say about this one, except I need to check and see if I have it. The penultimate book is a book. It's the type of book that I really love to read. Harry Potter and the Bible by Richard Abanes. Excuse me. This is a book that essentially is all about how Harry Potter is evil. It's going to lead people to witchcraft. The thing that always stood out to me was the author would talk about how, J.K. Rowling's would describe a spell, and some or all of the ingredients in that spell are real things. Therefore, it's a real spell. Your kids could be doing it and being led to witchcraft and Satanism. I find these books hilarious. Just the idea that this fictional world, whether or not you like Harry Potter, the books or the movies or whatever, just the idea that this fictional world is somehow going to lead poor innocent children into Satanism because it's going to make them think that they can cast these spells that they've seen or read in Harry Potter stuff. It amuses me. It's like, I think I've talked about, I'm almost certain I've talked about this before. When I was a Mason tender, my boss was a very religious man, and he was very anti Star Wars because of the Force. Star Wars was telling people to believe in the Force, something that wasn't God. And I'm like, it's fiction, dude. It's just fiction. The Force doesn't exist. But it's telling people to believe in it. Use the Force. Which is why he gave me a Walmart gift certificate as a Christmas bonus one year. He also wouldn't shop at Walden Books because they carried Playboy. So I didn't get a book certificate. He gave me a Walmart gift certificate, and I used it to buy a Star Wars game. But anyway, Harry Potter and the Bible, Richard Abanes. Very interesting book. Interesting to see how someone takes these books and movies and tells you that they're bad. I find these things hilarious. I love reading books like this. I've read the Dungeons and Dragons one. I have a bunch on how toys are satanic, Saturday morning cartoons are satanic, Halloween is satanic, which is maybe the closest thing to, I'm not going to say reasonable thinking, but at least you're in the ballpark, if you know what I'm saying. And some other ones on things that are satanic. And then finally, the last book that I read in October of 2002 is X-Men: The Legacy Quest Trilogy, Book 1. That's all there is. No subtitle or anything. By Steve Lyons. An X-Men book, obviously. And in this book, Beast is trying to find a cure for the legacy virus. He tests it on himself, which makes his blood the cure, possibly, for the legacy virus. He's kidnapped by Selene, who is the Black Queen of the Hellfire Club. Let me check my notes. She wants to use him for her own nefarious plans. The rest of the X-Men, to rescue him, have to team up with Sebastian Shaw, who is the Black King of the Hong Kong branch, at least in this story, the Hong Kong branch of the Hellfire Club. But of course, Sebastian Shaw's a bad guy. He's got his own secret plans. What's going to happen? It's the first book in a trilogy. Nothing's going to be resolved. So I'm not a huge X-Men fan, but I do love reading comic book novels based on comic books. And I am a fan of Beast. I mean, there are X-Men characters I like, and I don't actually hate the X-Men, as I tell a lot of people. So Beast was always one of my favorite characters. So fun stuff. And spoilers, first two books in November are going to be the books 2 and 3 of this trilogy. So there you go. That is what I read in October of 2002. Question for this video: do you have any special memories of Star Wars? Excuse me. Or any anecdotes or anything else? Let's just talk about Star Wars. Your thoughts, how it's affected you, any special stuff. Let me know. For me, um, I was a kid, 6th grade, between 5th and 6th grade, when the original came out, when it was just called Star Wars, and I absolutely loved it. I was getting the comics, the models, the action figures, the trading cards. I was playing with all this stuff. I think it was the second set of trading cards. If you put certain cards together, the back made a poster. I had all those things taped together and hanging on my wall. Um, so, yeah, huge fan of that. Love the original trilogy. The first one is the original, absolutely my favorite one. I'm not a big fan of the prequels simply because I don't think they're very well made movies. I think, I don't know, I don't like the way they look. I don't think they're. George Lucas keeps saying they're movies for kids, but I don't know a lot of movies for kids that focus on trade routes and stuff. Um, but that's me. I've tried to rewatch them to reevaluate, and I just don't think they're good. The new ones I enjoyed when I saw them. I was excited to see new Star Wars movies. I like a lot of the new characters, but they do rehash. Like the Force Awakens is a big rehash of the original Star Wars movie, and then having two different directors for the three movies with no idea of where they're going essentially worked for the original trilogy, but did not really work for the new trilogy. Um, Solo was fine. Rogue One, possibly the best of the new movies. And I haven't watched all the TV shows. I've only watched the first two seasons, of The Mandalorian. But I've read a ton of the books, not even half, but a bunch. Comics. I love Dr. Aphra, character original to the comic books. I have epic editions from Marvel that have reprints the entire original Marvel run. It's when I was in 6th grade, my friend and I wanted to make a sequel to Star Wars, but we kept arguing over who got to be Han Solo. Um, excuse me. And so, yes, I'm a Star Wars fan. I have Star Wars board games and card games, but I'm not obsessive about it. If you like the prequels, that's fine. If you like the new ones, that's fine. I mean, there are people that just crazy for this stuff. I can't think of any, aside from my friend and I wanting to make a sequel to Star Wars when we were in 6th grade. I can't think of any like special anecdotes. I did go see two or three, I think, of the new ones with my nephew and his wife, which was fun. We kind of make a day of it, get something to eat, go see the movie, hit the bookstore. But we don't dress up in costumes or anything. But what about you? Has Star Wars had an impact on your life? Are you a fan? Are you not a fan? If you're not, why not? Let me know in the comments below. If you have any comments, questions, corrections, please put those in the comments below. Comments are open for spoilers. Just post a spoiler warning. We try to be polite here on my channel. Please like, share, and subscribe. All the usual YouTube stuff. And if you'd care to follow me on other social media, my Twitter is @Ronin5757. My Instagram, where I post pictures of books, comic books, board games, fuzzy animals, is Eric Smith 5757. That's Eric with a K, ERIKSMITH 5757. And if you're on Blue Sky, I am at EL Smith. That is all I have for you this week. So until next week, read more books.